Hello and welcome to this episode of the Skift Meetings Podcast, the podcast for curious event professionals. My name is Andrea Doyle and I am the executive editor of Skift Meetings. In this episode entitled Melinda Burdette Planning for Planners, I have the pleasure of chatting with Melinda, the Senior Director of Events for Meeting Professionals International. We talk about what it is like planning events for planners, about why she says event logistics is like managing a controlled explosion, why MPI chooses second and third tier cities for its events. We also get into how soaring heat is impacting her events and the things she makes sure she has in place with the health and safety of her attendees in mind, why a surprise element is key in all the events she plans, and why it is important to have a sense of humor. I hope you enjoy listening to the conversation, and I invite you to check out other episodes of the Skift Meetings podcast with tips and insights from today's most influential event professionals. You can find all the episodes on our website or by subscribing through your favorite podcast service.
All right. Hi, I'm Melinda Burdette, Senior Director of Events for Meeting Professionals International.
Can you tell us a little bit about the events you plan for MPI?
Absolutely. So anytime that MPI as an organization meets face to face, then my team on the logistics side of things handles registration, housing, all of those things, logistics, meeting specs, F&B, attendee journey, all of that experience phased, exhibitors, all of those logistical items that happen at a meeting, whether, it's a 20-person meeting or a 20,000 person meeting.
And it must be a daunting task planning a meeting for meeting planners.
If you had asked me what I was going to be when I grew up and you said that this was going to be it, I would have said there's no way. There's absolutely no way that I would decide to be what our CEO calls the head chef of chefs. In that type of analogy. It is a daunting task. I will tell you that, but it keeps me on my toes. It keeps me looking forward and looking at future trends, because we all know it's a pendulum swing, right? The trends kind of go from one end to the other, but they're at this point in my career, I've been doing this for so long that there's probably a trend outside of AI that I've already used or experienced, or some of the technology things would be newer, but everything else, what's old is new again, kind of thing. So but I'm proud to do it. It's the reason that I came to MPI. I wanted to give back to the industry. I've had such a varied career that I felt like I was missing something in trying to teach that next generation, or the next couple of generations, or even my colleagues about, how to think about meetings differently. So for me, it was the logical step in my career.
So, why don't we talk a little bit about how you landed the position? Can you tell us how you found your way to meeting planning?
Wow. Okay. So that was a long, long time ago. Let me see if I can go back into my memory bank at this point. Yeah. So I actually found meeting planning by accident. I was working. I had already been an assistant manager for a retail store. I had already been a pharmacy technician at a retail pharmacy. I was working in the pharmacy at a major teaching hospital in my hometown, and just happened to walk by the job board. There's always a job board in those hospitals, and noticed that there was a job as a CME coordinator. So for those people who do medical meetings, that's continuing medical education coordinator. At the newest medical school that had been accredited in the country, which was in my hometown at Mercer University. And I thought, this sounds really interesting. And at the time, I was providing some assistance to the head of the pharmacy at the time. in a volunteer role with an association. Back in the day, it was the Southeastern Association of Hospital Pharmacists, and he asked me to assist him in putting on their annual meeting, and I loved it. I just thought that this is my people. This is really, this is really what I want to do. And so when I saw that position on the job board, I went and interviewed for it and got hired, and that's kind of how it started. It started in medical meetings with a brand new medical school. We didn't know what we didn't know. We just kind of went with it. And then the pharmaceutical rules changed, and I was in that position for a good close to 15 years. And then went to a medical association, a international medical association, and ran their meetings for a while. Then I completely pivoted, and went and worked for the Atlanta Braves for a season, because, I love the Atlanta Braves. I love everything about baseball, but was game day staff for the Atlanta Braves, and then went corporate. So, I worked for Black Knight Financial Services, part of the Fidelity Group in the corporate world, and then because of the connection that I had made in that International Medical Association, I got recruited over by a colleague that I had worked with in that International Medical Association. So it was like, do you want to come work for NPI? And I thought, that's what I was missing out of that corporate world. Corporate world is all about brand and trade shows, and that's great because there's so much change that you can affect that, and you can really affect the attendee experience with a really good trade show or a really good meeting or whatever that happens to be. But there wasn't a give back. There wasn't. I was missing that give back portion in the corporate world. So got recruited to come over to MPI.
And how long ago was that? When did you join MPI?
2015, December of 2015.
Okay.
So going on 9 years, or
So
9 years going on 10 years, I guess you could say.
so you've planned a whole lot of World Education Congresses for them.
Yeah, so my very first World Education Congress was in Atlantic City. That was in 2016. We had just come off of a successful program in San Francisco, and so I joined the team right in the halfway point between two World Education Congresses. So that was my very first one.
I attended that one. It was great.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. That was we had been contracted with Philly at the time, and Philadelphia got the bid for the Democratic National Convention. So we got booted out of Philly, and Atlantic City stepped up to the plate and said, "Hey, we would love to host you in Atlantic City." And so, MPI as an organization was just coming off of that recontracting to Atlantic City when I came on board. It was definitely an all hands on deck type of situation to, rethink and reimagine space use and all of that kind of stuff.
And I remember a lot of people were surprised that Atlantic City has all it has to offer.
I was surprised. I had never been to Atlantic City, and I think I was on board for a couple of weeks, and I was in Atlantic City, doing my first site visit, and I was surprised. I had never been, but I think that's what's so cool about some of the places that we go. I had never been to Indianapolis before we did a program in Indianapolis, and I think a lot of planners think of Indy as just a sports town, but it's so much more than that. And so in 2018, that's what we wanted to host. And just like Louisville that we just finished, a lot of people think that Louisville is just a bourbon town or just a horse town. And so, I love going to those middle market type of cities because it feels so different than taking a World Education Congress and going to Vegas. We're a small fish in a big old pond when we go to Vegas. But when we go to mid-tier, we're the big fish in a smaller pond. And so the engagement, I think, by everyone in the city is different. It looks different. It feels different. It feels more community based versus just event based.
And what I find interesting is all the research is showing that groups are looking at second and third tier cities right now because of costs and labor shortages. But you've been doing it for many years.
We've been doing it for many years and we'll continue to do it. We're going to St. Louis next year, San Antonio the year after that. Not sure where we're going in 27 through 30. That RFP is going out soon. But I think there's definitely something to be said, and I'm proud to be leading the team that's kind of showcasing these other tiered cities in order to host events.
So, we talked about Atlantic City and we talked about Indianapolis, and you and I chatted last week because I was working on a story about climate change and how, with outdoor events, and especially given last week's heat wave, it's important to have some sort of concessions in place for the heat. Can you touch upon that a little bit?
Yeah, I I think what I said last week, I've slept since then, so I'm not quite sure what I might have said, but I think it's you always have to have a plan. And it doesn't matter whether it's a snow plan, a rain plan, a heat plan. What is your plan associated with when things go awry? So I kind of go into every one of my locations that we're going to and saying, okay, what's the worst case scenario here? What's the worst case that can happen in this particular situation? And what are we going to do if we put ourselves in that situation? Because everything else seems great, right? I mean, we definitely have had some luck with some of the weather, but you have to think in terms of that. So if you can't have a backup plan. Like if you can't bring everyone inside, wherever it is that you're going because of a heat wave, then you have to make accommodations for that. Set out water. Set out cooling stations. Get someone to sponsor like cooling fans or handheld fans, or have misters everywhere. Have just buckets of water, like just grab and go kind of things. There are so many things that you can do if the alternative is not to move your event inside. Even if you just had the opportunity to have, in case someone does seem to be overheated, to just have a smaller space inside. So it wouldn't necessarily have to pull everyone inside. We did that in Vegas several years ago when we were there for WEC, and we had our closing event around a pool at the Venetian, and it was hot. It was hot, like 112 at 11 o'clock at night. I mean, Vegas is hot. But we did have at some areas around the pool there at the redone pool at the Venetian, had a couple of cooling rooms, right? So that you could go into this room and just sit down, grab some water if you wanted to. We knew that not everyone would need that ability, but again, just having that there and knowing, letting people know that it was there, and then making the staff aware that it was available, as well, so that if someone saw, it's that see something, say something. But if someone saw that they saw someone who might be a little bit in trouble, could help guide them then to that cooling off area.
Because health and safety of attendees is paramount.
Paramount. I mean, it's the number one concern. When we talk about the attendee experience, that's ingrained in our minds when we're thinking about that. We're talking about the safety upon arrival. We're talking about all of those kinds of things. And is that a plan that we have to have in place for each one of those opportunities? So when we go into a city, I'm thinking about the safety and security of the airport, the ride in from the airport, the hotel, the walk from the hotel to the venues, the bus situation, whatever that happens to be within the convention center. What is the safety and security of the attendee experience wherever it is that you're going within your event?
In your bio, you refer to event logistics as managing controlled explosions. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's so we always talk about the chaos of event logistics, because if you're in event logistics, it's chaotic. It is absolutely chaotic. And the goal from my standpoint is, we know it's going to be somewhat chaotic. So you're trying to minimize the chaos, number one, but you're also trying to make sure that chaos doesn't spill from back of house. So we use it as an analogy of like if you're in a general session, the chaos needs to be behind the curtain. The same type of thing needs to happen. If there's something chaotic that is going on, then we need to be able to manage that. Like I have people talk to me, as I'm walking around at opening parties or closing parties or whatever that happens to be, and they say you always have a smile on your face. Is it because I know things are happening? We might have someone falling out from the heat. I've got a team that's handling that back here, but I'm trying to divert attention away from that. But my whole idea is if I'm stressed, if I look stressed, if I'm emanating that stress, what is it doing to everyone else, right? If I'm the person in charge and I'm calm, cool, and collected, at least as far as you can see, because I can promise you, I'm like a duck underwater and I'm swimming to keep my head above water. But as the person in charge, if I'm calm, cool, and collected, that emanates to the staff, it emanates to the attendees. So you have to balance on what that looks like, and you have to surround yourself with good people, right? I know I've got trust in the team members to get the job done. If I need to step in, I'll step in. As we did have a heat event in Louisville at our rendezvous event, and so we have a security team that was there on site getting her cooled off. I was just there to try to protect the attendees' privacy associated, with because people love to watch car wrecks and those kinds of things. So there's always concern and those kinds of things going on. So we're just there to try to protect their privacy while the people who are paid to do that kind of thing from a first aid standpoint or what have you can do their job.
And was that an outdoor event, rendezvous this year?
It was indoor and outdoor. So there was an outdoor element associated with it. And this individual just had a moment.
Is there an event you've organized in your career that you're most proud of?
Most proud. I am most proud of every event that we do as long as it's successful and no harm is done, no harm to the city and that our attendees leave, that we fulfilled the mission of that particular event. Because every event has a different mission, right? Whether it's KPIs, whether it's whatever that happens to be. So
Okay.
I think you would have to say I'm proud of every event we've ever done. I think if I had to think back of the first time that I was the most proud of an event was back when I was doing medical meetings for the medical school and the teaching hospital, and we created a history of medicine conference that had not been being done. At least in the southeastern United States, but we created a history of medicine conference that ended up being like one of the biggest conferences we ever did because we were getting those people. Like we got I forget what the gentleman's name is. He's out of Dallas, obviously. What you'll know when I talk about it, but he was the chief resident when JFK got shot in Dallas, and he was the chief surgery resident when JFK got taken to Parkland Hospital. So he came to talk about how things have changed in medicine and communication since that incident happened. So we really kind of we really kind of relied on, you need to understand where we were in order to see where we might be going in the future. And so it was just a half day program, but it was wildly successful. And I remember the folks from Emory. So I think everybody, at least in the southeastern United States, knows Emory University as very much a stellar hospital system to go into, or healthcare system to go into. And the people of Emory were calling to see if we could partner on something and do something, with them. And I really thought that was the first time that I felt validated about the things that we were doing. Right, we were doing something right when we were just the newest medical school in the country, and here Emory University came to us and said, "We love what you're doing. We'd love to partner with you." So, I think that was the first time. But ever since then, you have to every successful meeting has its own unique footprint on your heart.
What future trends are you most excited about in the industry?
AI. I think that is it scary? Sure. I mean, we don't know what we don't know yet about how we're going to maneuver through this. But I think when I think about the fact that event teams and most teams are still doing more with less. I mean, when I was hired for MPI, there were 7 people in the events team, and that did not include our leadership at the time. Now there's 3, and it includes me. So, and we're doing more meetings now than we were doing in 2015, 2016 when I got hired. So when I think about the possibilities of what AI can do to help us streamline processes or emails or meeting specs or whatever that happens to be, whether it's collecting data and analyzing data for us, it's going to take some of those manual processes for us and streamline that in order to make it's not that I'm still not fighting for more personnel, but it's going to take what we're currently doing and hopefully make it easier for us to get that done so we can pay more attention to creating those wonderful experiences that we do.
How do you see events in general changing in the next 5 years?
I'm not really sure. I've been like I said, I've been doing this a long time, and I'm not really sure that there's ever been a wholesale change in events outside of, obviously COVID, where events really were halted. What we're looking back on that time and thinking, should they really have been halted? Now, MPI continued to hold face-to-face events through that because as a leader in the hospitality industry and certainly again cooking for chefs, we wanted to make sure that we could show you how it could be done safely, within budget, keeping sustainability in top of mind. So I really think that the value of face to face will not go away. There's just so much more value. This is great. Zoom is great. Teams is great, but there's nothing like meeting someone face to face and getting business done, making that networking connection, making friends. I mean, how many friends have we all gotten throughout, lifelong friends throughout the industry? I just think that the value of face-to-face meetings will never go away. I think we just have to continue to push that agenda, if you want to call it that, and to say, yeah, there are meetings that can and probably should be conducted over Zoom or whatever. So make that determination early, but don't discount the value of the face-to-face.
You mentioned COVID. Are there
Yeah.
any learnings from the pandemic that you can share?
Oh gosh, what didn't we learn about the pandemic? Personally, I didn't know a whole lot about digital experiences, creating a digital experience or creating that hybrid, where you're doing the live meeting plus you're talking to the digital audience. I didn't speak the language. I didn't, there's a whole separate language associated with digital event production. And so I had to go to school myself to try to figure out how to navigate through that. I think those were some of the biggest learnings coming out of COVID. I think that if we ever get into a situation where we again need to physically distance, we need to get it, have a single path through an event or through a room so that there's one entry, one exit. We've got the footprint associated with that. We've got the footprint associated with handling an event from a food and beverage standpoint, taking away a self-serve buffet. We've got those footprints available there. How to keep people safe, how to take temperatures every day, how to validate all of those kinds of things. I mean, I was planning meetings in the medical association when the SARS outbreak first came in, and we were actually doing our annual meeting down in Houston, where it was one of the areas that had a SARS surge. And we didn't do anything like we did for COVID at that point. We did do obviously some health and safety issues, but I think that a footprint for the next time this comes around has been written now, and hopefully, knock on wood, we won't put ourselves in that situation. But yeah, lots of learnings coming out of that. The fact that you can still have your meeting, still have all the elements of the meeting, but you have to think about them differently. I remember our general services contractor coming to me and saying, I haven't received the graphic for the ribbon wall yet. And I was like, the ribbon wall. I can't have I can't have 800 people going and touching all the ribbons, right? Because you can't touch them and put them back. So how am I going to execute the ribbon wall and not have people touching the ribbon? So we kind of did it like a Chinese menu, right? We had 40 different choices, and you said you wanted one number one and two number 12s, and you things. So we had it staffed by an individual with gloves on who went and touched, so only one person was touching those ribbons and then giving them to the attendee. So again, you had to think about things differently, and how do you create that experience?
There's some that feel sustainability took a hit during the pandemic with all the disposable
Yeah,
dinnerware.
but there was a way to do that. We did it very successfully in Grapevine, and it's about partnering with that institution and understanding what the goal was. So the goal for us was to be sustainable and not to increase our costs, obviously, and that's our goal every time. So I think we definitely used, if it was disposable, then it was bamboo based, but we tried to do a lot of real dishes and real silverware and those kinds of things versus the bamboo. I think we did bamboo for one, just to show that it can be done, and how you can do that in a quote unquote throwaway type of manner. We had to think about water bubblers differently, because again, people touching, right? People touching surfaces. You have to think about that differently. And so how do you provide water to everyone without doing single use plastic? So yeah, I mean, there were a lot of learnings. I do think that it took a hit. It took a hit primarily because people weren't having meetings. The people that did have meetings, like MPI, continued to focus on sustainability throughout the pandemic.
What do you feel the future holds for sustainability in the industry?
I think sustainability will just continue to get more and more of a footprint and more of a focus associated with events. I mean, we all see the effects of global warming. We just talked about how hot it's been. I was in Ottawa, Canada. I live in Florida. For those of you who don't know, I live in Florida. It's hot, right? It's hot. I did not expect to go to Ottawa and it feel like 100 in Ottawa. I was expecting like 70-degree temperatures, but it was 100 degrees in Ottawa when I was up there. So we're all feeling, whether we're actively acknowledging that we're feeling the effects of global warming, or the change in the environment, whatever it is you want to call it. There's a change, and we and I think that that's going to change our mindset as to how we're moving forward. I think more venues are focusing on sustainability. I think that historically speaking, all the venues that I've ever done meetings with in Canada are really more focused on sustainability and reclaiming power and those kinds of things in the venues than a lot of folks are, specifically in the states. Sustainability is huge over in Europe. But when we did a couple of years ago, I was in Tokyo talking to a group of students there, and they just didn't really know how to even approach sustainability at that point, or to get their venues to talking about sustainability. So it is different in all parts of the world. And you just have to figure out how you can maneuver and make the most sustainable event with where you are. I don't think you can ever take a standard footprint and apply it overarchingly to every single venue. You're just trying to hit the most points. Where is it that we can meet? Yes, we all have a set of guidelines that we want to go by, but to think that everyone is going to be able to abide by every single piece of those guidelines is unrealistic. So where is it that we can meet each other in the middle and make and help reduce that carbon footprint of our events?
If you could change one thing in the events industry, what would that be?
Ribbons. Did I mention ribbons? They're the bane of my existence. I don't know what I would change. That's a really big question. What would I change in the events industry? if I could. I really think that um, it would be twofold. I think that we all have situations and stories to share, and I think that people, um, everybody likes to keep their own toys in their toy box, right? And they don't like to share because they think that that gives them job security or whatever. And I'm just like, if we're not sharing, then we're not doing it for the betterment of the industry, right? And so I truly believe in the betterment of the industry. So if I have knowledge or whatever ability is to share that knowledge out, I'm going to do it and I'm going to take advantage of it. And then I think, personally, I think that more attention in the sustainability realm and that give back realm. So it's not just about being sustainable; it's that corporate social responsibility that includes like recognition of human trafficking and doing all that you can to prevent those kinds of things. It's a broader aspect. So I think that more focus on sustainability and corporate social responsibility should be more of a focus of the industry as well.
Have you attended an event recently that really impressed you, and what impressed you about it?
I'm impressed by all my colleagues who put on events because it's not easy, right? It's not
Mhm.
easy doing events for event professionals in whatever realm to be. But there's something that I take away. So apologize, I'm about to sneeze. I'm trying to get over it. But there's something that we can all take away from every event that we go to. I love the fact that Cvent Connect does those thermal printing of those badges on site. I love that. I love that idea. I love that opportunity to be able to on demand print those thermal printed badges. I love the fact that PCMA does a really good job at and I don't even know what they call it, but it's really their networking spaces. They get some tremendous sponsors into their networking spaces. They get some tremendous keynote speakers as far as celebrity keynote speakers that I think that they do very very well with. I think that every meeting that I've ever gone to, there's been something that I really like about that meeting. And again, from an NPI perspective, we just try to show those kinds of things and make it scalable because not everybody does meetings for 3 to 5,000 people. So what makes it scalable? So yeah, I mean, every meeting impresses me, whether it's a good impression or a bad impression. And trust me, I have, there are things that I don't like about other meetings as well. But I'm not going to stand in line to tell that meeting professional what's wrong with their own meeting because I understand that there's things happening in the background that as an attendee, I don't know what that is. So there could be other things that are causing whatever is happening or whatever that bad experience is that I'm not privy to at that point. So you just try to give grace to every meeting, or you should be trying to give a little bit of grace to the meeting planners that are behind the scenes trying to create these experiences.
And you have a better understanding than anyone about what's going on in that background.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Whether that's good or bad, yeah, there's always something. There is no perfect meeting. I've never put on a perfect meeting because there's always been at least something that went wrong. Whether it was a person who came up and they swore they were registered but they weren't registered, kind of thing. There's always something. Again, it we define that controlling that controlled explosion as to how big is that explosion going to be? Is that explosion going to affect all the other attendees, or is that explosion just happening between the registration staff and that particular attendee? So, when you talk about those controlled explosions, they really are because they're hot button issues for whoever's having the issue, right? Whether it's me having the issue with a vendor or whether it's an attendee having an issue with us or whatever it happens to be, you're just trying to control that explosion. And so it's just a measure of where you're going to go and how you're going to address it.
What do you hope that people who attend MPIs World Education Congresses and your other events walk away with?
Outside of the obvious as far as takeaways, we want you to be able to take away little nuggets of information that you can use at your meetings. But I want my meetings to bring a sense of community, a sense of belonging for everyone. And I want them to get what they came for, right? I want them to get, whether they came for the networking side of it, whether they came for the education side of it, and I want to surprise them in some way, shape, or form. Whether it is the location that has surprised them, whether it's a new food and beverage opportunity that surprises them. I want them to have at least one surprise. I want them to feel that sense of community with their colleagues, because we're all in this together. And I want them to get their return on investment.
We'd like to touch upon leadership qualities in our podcasts. So I was hoping you could tell us about your key qualities or skills that have enabled you to be successful.
Um, Gosh, I think that my colleagues would probably say that it's my sense of humor. So, I mean, I'm not curing cancer here, guys. I'm not the doctor I'm not putting rockets into the sky. I'm not, you have to temper what you're doing and bring that sense of humor. If you don't have a sense of humor about meetings and events, you're not going to last very long.
Okay.
Because I promise you, we could make a reality show about this that would outsell any Real Housewives reality show that's currently out there. Because you just cannot make this stuff up that happens at meetings and events. And so you have to have that sense of humor about what it is that you're doing. I think my leadership style is I'm not going to micromanage you. If you're new to the industry, I'm going to carry you along and give you all the tidbits that are happening in my brain at that point. But then I want you to be able to take that information and go fly on your own. I think that's what my role is. We do a lot of entry level opportunities, and I think that at any one time, I have employees that I have had through my entire career who would probably come and work for me again, because we established a relationship. Not only a working relationship, but a friendship associated with that, and that's somewhat rare. I think in our industry, and so there's some loyalty associated with that, and I feel as though if someone leaves after working with me and they're just bettering themselves and getting better jobs, right, as they go through their career, then maybe I helped that by giving them a good foundation. And I really think that that's probably one of the stronger aspects. I have a sponge for memory, so I might not write it down, but I'm going to remember that we had the conversation, and I can pull out specs out of my brain just by thinking about them, kind of thing. I think there's some eidetic memory associated with that. I think that's a lot of the success as well. But I really just think that I've had some really good mentors throughout the years who were very well spoken and who let me develop within their guidance in a way that worked with my personality. And I think I really just kind of took that leadership style with me.
And who are those people or organizations that you've learned from or partnered with that have been key in your career?
So it started out with the gentleman that gave me my very first opportunity, and that was Fred Coleman, who was director of our pharmacy at the time, who just let me help him plan a volunteer meeting that he was a member of a society. He opened my eyes. Dr. Robert Four, who is dean of a medical school in Chattanooga, he brought me into the medical meetings world. He was that next boss who really taught me more about medical meetings and really about meetings, because that was at a time where all the guidelines, when I first started doing medical meetings, you could basically do anything you wanted to do in a medical meeting. And then all the rules and regulations started rolling around. first from a pharmaceutical company standpoint and then from a physician interaction standpoint. So that was that, it was being able to navigate that within change, because it was some significant changes going on at the time. And then when I went to a medical association, it was Don Jones in that medical association who really just kind of gave me the wings to create an entirely separate business unit within that medical association, because he saw that I could work specifically with pharmaceutical companies and create this satellite really business unit within that association and work directly with pharmaceutical companies to create their visions at scientific meetings throughout the world. And then it was, it's Paul Vandeventure at MPI. I mean, he believes in me so much as his person, his event person, and his leadership style is definitely different than those that have come before him. But I've learned so much about him and from him about just humanizing a leader. I think that we don't humanize our leaders enough. We just kind of sometimes put them on a pedestal too much. And what we've learned is how to really humanize ourselves, being with Paul's leadership.
Is there anything that keeps you up at night?
Budgets.
Okay. And is it tougher now with increasing cost?
Absolutely, because there's no rationale to the increasing cost in some situations, right? And yeah, I mean, at the bottom line, I'm sure that companies are just trying to recover from the time when they couldn't get all that money during COVID. But are we ever, now that we've set that precedent and we're willing to pay those prices, will they ever go back down again? The answer is no. So how is it that you navigate that? Because now, in order to make I have a profit margin associated with my events that I need to meet. So how is it that I'm going to increase sales or increase sales opportunities and increase the number of people that come to my event so that I can make up that difference, potentially, between that positive and negative margin?
So budget's definitely a hot button issue, and the other hot button issue we hear about is workforce. Are you finding it challenging to build and nurture your team, and how are you dealing with it?
No, I don't feel it. I don't. The only challenge associated with that is finding the time
Mhm.
to nurture them, because again, we're doing more meetings now than we were doing in 2015 with less people. But I make it a point to, like, if I'm on vacation, I want them to take a vacation. You need to have that mental break. You need to get away. And so you nurture through example. So I try to make sure now, I'm going to check my email. It's just who I am, right? But I'm not going to start a whole email chain while I'm on vacation that's going to completely take away my vacation. But I'm going to make sure that there's nothing on fire that I need to insert myself into. It's different for them because they're not in a leadership role and they don't need to kind of keep their finger on the pulse. So if they see that I'm actually taking a vacation and getting away mentally and doing all of those things, then you're going to nurture them in that situation. And I encourage them to take their vacation. I encourage them to attend industry meetings or to do webinars or to take certificate programs as time allows. And sometimes that's on a Saturday, or it's on, or it's after hours and those kinds of things. But I want to give them the budget and the bandwidth in order to do that.
So we always end our podcasts by asking who should be our next guest and what should we ask that person?
Yeah, you gave me a heads up on this. And I think your next podcast should be with Kitty Radcliffe, who is the president and CEO of Explore St. Louis.
You know what?
Uh,
I've had Kitty on,
have you had
and she
Kitty
was
on?
amazing. Yeah, amazing. Well, you could give it some thought. And
Well, I just, I'm so impressed with her career.
Mhm.
As a woman leader,
Right.
I in an industry that has so many women, I love to celebrate those women. If I had to go recently, we just had two chairs. I'm not sure if it has ever happened in the history of MPI, but the chair of our international board and the chair of our global board of trustees were both women. So that's Michelle Algauer and Susie Townsend, respectively, were the chairs. And so, anytime that there's that type of situation, I wanna, absolutely applaud that and promote that as much as possible. So, I mean, any of those women who have been in leadership opportunities, I think you should get them on and talk about their leadership style, right? Christine Duffy, if I have to kind of think back to some of the people that I have worked with over the years, and who are in leadership positions, love to get them on your podcast.
Well, that sounds great. I'll definitely reach out. Well, thank you so much. This has been so enjoyable.
Absolutely, anytime.
Thank you.